Welcome to the Get Money Smart podcast, hosted by myself, Helen McCabe. This is part of the Central Scotland's Financial Capability Programme, which is funded by the Robertson Trust. This is episode 3 of our newly launched podcast, and today we're going to talk about Talk Money Week, which takes place on the 3rd of November to the 7th of November, and why it's important. Before I start, I'd like to introduce today's guest from Money and Pension Service, which is MAPS. Is it okay to call it MAPS?
Yes.
This guest doesn't just sit behind a desk. He's known for his collaborative approach, and you'll see he's always out supporting events, collaborating and promoting financial wellbeing and the MoneyHelper right across the country. I've been fortunate enough to have collaborated with this guest and his team through the work that I do over the last 4 years, as well as many other organisations who I know have benefited from his collaborative approach. So I know today's chat is going to be full of practical insights and useful information. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Kevin Duffy, Scotland's Partnership Manager at Money and Pension Service. So welcome, Kevin.
Thank you very much, Helen. Thanks for the introduction and thanks for having me along.
You're very welcome. It's fantastic to have you here.
Just to kick things off, could you tell our listeners a little bit about your role at Money and Pension Service and what your work involves?
Yes. So just for the benefit of the listeners, if they aren't familiar with the Money and Pension Service, we are an arm's length government body. We are sponsored by the Department for Work and Pensions, and we provide free, impartial money and pensions guidance to everyone across the UK through our MoneyHelper service, which I'm going to speak a little bit more about today. And then in terms of my role as Scotland Partnership Manager, I work with organisations like yours all across Scotland and really look at ways that we can support and improve financial wellbeing, both through organisations and connecting with individuals in our range of settings.
Thanks for sharing that, Kevin. That's such a brilliant insight into your role. It's really inspiring to hear how you're working to support and improve financial wellbeing across the UK and Scotland. And it definitely sets the perfect stage for our conversation today, especially as we dive into the themes of Talk Money Week and why these conversations matter so much. So from your perspective, why is Talk Money Week such an important opportunity to start conversations about money and planning for the future? And what particularly makes this week so powerful for opening up those discussions?
Yeah, so Talk Money Week is a UK-wide campaign. So we run it annually with the support of our partners across the 4 nations of the UK. And it's really important to talk about money now because we're still not great at it. You know, here in Scotland and across the UK, we could be a lot better when it comes to talking about money and pensions. There's a stigma still related to, you know, money and how we deal with money issues. And our research is quite powerful. So we find that people who talk about money tend to make better financial decisions. People who talk about money tend to have stronger personal relationships. They tend to provide their children with better money habits for life if they have a family. And generally people feel less stressed when they talk about money. So there's a lot of good reasons, you know, to start these conversations and to take action around your money and pensions. And that's why the campaign's so important, because it allows us to connect with our partners and build this movement around it to get people thinking about it and talking about it.
I totally agree with you. I think starting those conversations is such a powerful first step. Talk Money Week really does shine that light on how important it is to break the silence around money and pensions. And I absolutely love that you're focusing on building a movement and working with partners just to make those conversations more accessible and action orientated. I'm totally on board with this myself. I'm going to be doing some planning activities with colleagues and some of the community groups I work with just to keep those conversations going beyond this week and try and embed it into everyday life. So thanks for explaining that to all the listeners. You mentioned collaborations with partners earlier, which is fantastic. But who's Talk Money Week actually for? Is it mainly aimed at advice services, or is it something that anyone can get involved in?
No, so it's open to everyone really. So as I said, we want our partners across the UK to get involved, and spread the message to their employees and their customers and their service users and such like. But no, we can talk money in any sort of setting really. So the workplace, at home, even in education settings. We have a number of resources that we promote each year to help people get involved. So we have a participation pack that partners can utilise. We have a communications toolkit to support the likes of social media activity. And we've even got a schools toolkit as well to sort of support those conversations with children and young people. So it's open to everyone, really.
I think that's really interesting, and I'm actually quite interested in the toolkit for schools. So I think this is really good to hear, and it's good that Money and Pension Services, part of the MoneyHelper, are getting involved in that, so that we can start to educate our young people, so that they are going to be able to plan for the future and for having better financial lives, because I think that's been a thing that's missing in a lot of generations.
And it's part of our strategy to improve financial well-being, but you're right, a lot of work to do there. And Talk Money Week forms part of that as well, to try and introduce some of these conversations in these types of settings where we can.
Yeah, and it's good that we've got events like this, because in the work that I do, as you rightly said earlier, money conversations is a very difficult thing for a lot of people, and getting that, making it an everyday thing that people are comfortable talking about it. The more people are comfortable talking about it, the more people are going to not bury their head in the sand, and they're going to start using some of the resources that's there.
Yeah.
So when we think about planning for the future, especially when it comes to our pensions, what should we be considering? And for someone who's just getting started with this, why is it important to start planning early?
Yeah, so I think you've sort of touched on it there. When we talk about pension planning, we're sort of investing in our future selves, if you like, so we're planning for the future. So pension planning is about saving and investing, in a savings vehicle or a pensions pot that you can then access in later life when you retire and such like. And the reason it's so important to think about it as early as possible is because the more time you can give yourself to save, the more opportunity your money's got to grow, which means the better off you are when you come to access it. But in saying that as well, it's never too late to take action. We want people to be proactive, so it doesn't matter, what age you are or what your financial situation might be. I think the sort of point that I'd like to get across on today's episode is that MoneyHelper is available to everyone. We're here to provide that practical approach, help people find a way forward. So it doesn't matter what the inquiry might relate to. We're here to try and give people that support where they need it.
And I'm glad you've mentioned that, because the support that you offer through the MoneyHelper is all free. It's confidential, it's impartial information, and that's something that a lot of people in the communities that I work are not always aware that there's free help there, because some people are still paying for advice, and I know that that's a big problem in the sector. That the majority of advice services are worried about, that people are still in a situation where they're paying for advice, and there's lots of free resources out there that people can tap into. So what would you say are some of the most common misconceptions about pensions that people might have about pensions?
Yeah, I think you've probably touched on a couple of the most common misconceptions there. So there's a bit of fear around pensions and planning for later life, because people feel that it's quite a complex subject matter, which it is. Pensions can be complex, but we're here to help remove some of the complexity and the jargon to help people understand. And then again, I think it's quite a big misconception. A lot of people think that they have to pay for pensions advice, and that's probably a key point to get across today. At MoneyHelper, we don't provide regulated financial advice, but we provide free, impartial guidance. So if anyone is unsure about planning for later life, or they don't understand the types of pensions available, or they don't understand state pension, we're here to provide that information and education so that if someone did have to go and take regulated advice, they can be in a better position to do that.
And that's a really good point to highlight, because through the workshops that I do one around pension. You know, a lot of it is around pension awareness, and it is linking people to the resources that MoneyHelper have, because there's lots of great tools and resources on the website. And I think the fact that you've mentioned about the regulated service, I think that's people sometimes don't realise when they're going to get advice. People are talking about pensions in the communities, and they're getting wrong information. And I think that's why if you go to something that's backed by the government through the MoneyHelper, then they're going to get that up-to-date, accurate information. It's free and it's impartial.
It's good to research sort of regulated advisors that you might decide to engage with. Sometimes people will get recommendations from family and friends and things like that, but it's just really important, if you are going down a regulated advice route, that you just make sure that the advisor has the appropriate credentials and they're authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority.
Thank you for that, Kevin, because I do advocate that in the workshops. That it's the one thing I always say: make sure that you check the FCA website, because they've got a part on it that you can check to see if somebody's registered on it. And just be careful when you're taking advice from friends in the community, because one person's situation might not be the same as yours, and it might be different. So that was a really good point to make, that you know, you have to make sure that they are registered with the FCA. One of the things I was going to mention was, again, it's about the planning side of things, where people want to plan for the type of retirement lifestyle they want to have, and what that might cost them. And I'm going to use myself as a really bad example. I did not plan properly for my pension, because I was one of these youngsters back in the day that thought, oh, pensions won't be there for me, and you know, I'll be fine, I'll worry about that day when I come to it. But I'm now here, and you know, the minute you hit 50, that's the reality check, is what have I done? So when I was in my 40s, that's when I started to sort of look actively at it, and I've regretted not taking on and not opting in when I should have. So for somebody like myself, and I was wanting to think about planning for my retirement and the sort of lifestyle that I want to kind of maintain, how would I go about doing that?
Well, the good news is, Helen, you've been proactive about it, and that's what we're here to encourage, you know, so it doesn't matter what's happened in the past and such like. It's about how you manage things moving forward. So yeah, again, within MoneyHelper, we've got loads of resources, information and guidance to support people, you know, get into thinking about the sort of retirement they might want to have, or the lifestyle they might want to have. So we have a full suite of tools and calculators on MoneyHelper, which I know you signpost to. But just to call out a couple that are relevant to this point. So we've got a really useful pensions calculator. So that allows you to put, you know, information relating to your own circumstances. And that can help give you a picture of, you know, what you've got at the moment, or where you want to get to in the future. There's a sort of toggle feature on it that allows you to, you know, look at different options and such like. And then linked to the pensions calculator, we've also recently developed and launched a tool that we call the Money Midlife MOT. So as you said, as you move into your 40s and 50s, you're probably thinking about, you know, how you want to live in later life. So the Money Midlife MOT is most suitable for people aged between 45 and 65. But again, that will ask you a series of intuitive questions about your personal circumstances. And then depending on what you feed into the tool, that will give you a bit of an action plan to work to, you know, so highlight some of the things that you're doing well. It'll highlight other areas that you should be thinking about. It'll signpost to other areas of MoneyHelper that can support, and even other, you know, trusted partners who we work with that can give you that additional information. So for anyone who's listening today, that is online access, some really useful stuff that you can look at in the back of this and get a feel for how the tools work for you when it comes to your money management.
And the pension calculator, Kevin, that you've mentioned there, I've had a wee shot of that. I think it's fab. It's the only downside is it's the reality check that I didn't want, but it's also, so it's given me that sort of motivation that I can start to plan better, so that I know that I need to sort of really realistically think about what sort of lifestyle I want when I get to that age. So I used to joke about, you know, I'll probably be working in the supermarket when I'm 75. Well, that looks like it's going to happen. So I may have to keep working forever and ever to keep putting money away. But it's certainly a good tool for me, so that I can then review it every so often.
That's it,
which is quite good. So it means that if you've looked at it and it's made you feel like the heart sink at the moment, then it gives you that reality check that you can start to sort of plan things and think, right, I've got an action plan now that I can start to put money away, and then I can review it again in a year's time or a couple of years to see what, and then I could go back and get some more help.
Exactly. And one of my colleagues calls it life admin, you know, so every so often you should be doing a bit of life admin. So if you get a pay rise, you know, then does that potentially free up a little bit of extra cash for you to put aside and such like. So that's it's about looking at where you are presently, and then as your situation changes, as things move on, looking at what you can do moving forward as well. So it's really important to do that sort of check-in to see how you're tracking and where you're at.
And that is a really good point about the tracking and reviewing, because I think sometimes the misconception that I come across even doing the workshops and when I'm showing people the tools, different calculators, getting people to do budgeting and things like that, some people think that that's a one fix. You do it once and that's it. You check what your income is, you check what your outgoings are, you look at what you've got left, then you make a plan around that, and then that's you done. But I think, like you really highlighted there, and that's a really good point, is it's an ongoing thing. You have to keep doing it, like everything else. So yeah, it's a maintaining it is the thing we have to do. So how does pension planning differ depending, and you've touched on it quite a bit there when you talked about midlife MOT. So for somebody who was in their 30s, like what I was once upon a time when I was in my 30s, compared to someone like me now who's in my 50s, what sort of planning how different is it for somebody planning for their 30s to somebody in their 50s? Because I'm constantly talking to some of my colleagues who are the younger colleagues, and I'm trying to tell them not to do what I did and wait and think it'll never happen. Because somebody actually said that to me the other day, oh, it's too early for this. And I said, no, you're 28. It is never too early.
Never too early.
That is when I should have started, but I didn't. And I had the exact same attitude. So what would you say to someone to plan for that at that age?
Yeah, I think just as we've touched on earlier, you know, the earlier you think about this now, the better off you will be going forward. And then in terms of, you know, how does it differ for someone in their 30s compared to someone in their 50s? I think some of the things that we've spoken about previously is, you know, we're at different life stages at different ages, you know, so, you know, people in their 30s might be in a position to save up and try and buy a house and get a mortgage and things like that. People might be having a family, you know, so you know, women have to sometimes take time off work to have a child, and that can affect how much they pay into their pension and things like that. There's a bit of a gender gap when it comes to that type of thing, which has been looked at, and that's part of the work that we do as well. We have a gender lens on our financial wellbeing strategy. And then if you look at it when you're in your 50s now, we're all living in an aging population, you know, so we're all living a bit longer, which means we'll need more money going forward. And then there's also the aspect that, you know, if we still have our parents, or if we still have, you know, one of our parents, as we move into our 50s, we may have to support some of their care, you know, which again, there can be a cost involved as well. So all of this is linked to, you know, planning for and living in later life. But the sort of short and easy answer is the earlier that you think about it and the earlier you do something about it, the better off you'll be in future. So for those 28-year-olds that you work with, get them having a look at MoneyHelper to get an idea of where they'll be going forward.
Thank you for that, Kevin. I'm glad you put that message out there, and I'll make sure that some of my colleagues are listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
So one of the things that came up in one of the workshops that I was doing, and it does come up when I'm having conversations, because pension seems to be on people's mouths at the moment a lot. People are talking about pensions a lot. What do we do to plan? And one of the things that's coming up about tracking pensions, so people are like, like for myself, I've worked 35 plus years, so I might actually go in and do this anyway, just to have a look to see if there's anything that might be lurking in the background that I might have got. So what do people do if they want to trace or track pensions? Is there anything that they can use?
Yeah, absolutely. So that there's something for now and something that's in the pipeline that might be worth mentioning today. So for now, there's a government team called the Pension Tracing Service. So they're available on the gov.uk website. I know you've probably signposted to them previously. But yeah, just as you said there, as people move jobs, maybe lose track of what they've paid into through employer schemes and things like that, you can get in touch with the Pension Tracing Service and give them some of your details, and they will help you try and identify any lost pots over the years. So that's quite an important piece of admin to carry out, just to see where you stand. And then this has been in the news recently, so it might be of interest to your listeners, but at the Money and Pension Service, we are involved in a project called the Pension Dashboard Programme. So further down the line, what we'll have on MoneyHelper is a pension dashboard that allows you to see all of your pension pots in one place, which will be a bit of a game changer for people, because it provides those visuals and helps people understand, you know, what they've got in place and what they might have to do as they plan for later life. So yes, once the pension dashboard is in place, I think it would be definitely worthwhile you having a wee look, Helen, just in case there's one sneaking about somewhere that you've forgotten about or you didn't realise that it was there.
I'm so going to be doing that. The minute that comes out, you need to let me know, because I will be looking at that just in case. Every penny counts as far as I'm concerned. So we've kind of touched on quite a lot around sort of misconceptions, what would put people off. There is a lot of overwhelming aspects of pensions, and people sort of looking at reviewing their money. So what do you think would be one of the biggest barriers that people do face when it comes to engaging with pensions?
Yeah, I think we've probably touched on some of the barriers. So I think the barriers that we see through our MoneyHelper teams, you know, there is people tend to be switched off by pensions because they think they're complex, or they don't really know how to engage with them, or if they've paid into pensions over the years, maybe if they've been working, things like that, don't really know the best way to go about it. So the good news is, as I kind of touched on earlier, we exist to help people, you know, break down that complexity and jargon and help them be proactive about it. So we have a variety of delivery channels that we support people on. So, you know, people can have a look at our guidance and information online. We have the tools and calculators, which are sort of self-help resources. But, you know, we've got a WhatsApp contact number for money guidance. We have a general pensions helpline, so people can pick up the phone and speak to a human being, which I think is really important. And then for anyone who's aged 50 or over, we also have our PensionWise service. So PensionWise is a service that's designed to support us as we move into our 50s. If we have a defined contribution workplace pension scheme, you're eligible for a free PensionWise appointment, and that's where you can chat with one of our pension specialists about, you know, your own situation, where things stand at the moment, what do you have in place, when do you think you would like to retire, what do you have to do to get there successfully. So that's a really, really beneficial service. We also offer an online journey as well, so people can look at that online if that suits them better. So yeah, just to help with the sort of barriers and the complexity and things like that. Again, if anybody's listening today who's in that 50 or over bracket, I would encourage them to take advantage of the PensionWise service.
And I'm glad you've said that, Kevin, because I have done that very thing. I have went on to PensionWise. I've tried to get some colleagues on it, so I've promoted it through the work as well, and through some of the workshops that I do. So when I'm doing a workshop around pensions, it's one of the things that I do mention, so that people can like you said there, it's about that when you're overwhelmed, you don't know where to start, then that's a great place to just sort of make that appointment. It's a free 1 hour appointment. I found it very valuable for me. It just gave me that sort of idea that I was on the right track of what I had already used the resources on the MoneyHelper for, because I was playing around with them for my own personal, so that I could then talk about it through my workshops. And it was through that it led me to think about the pension wise. And I think you had mentioned it at something else we were at, so I thought, right, I'm going to do this. So I found it very useful. I have encouraged people around me to tap into that. It does help to break down some of those barriers that you had mentioned, and making it less overwhelming. And you can probably revisit that again in a few years' time once you've, reviewing your plan. Is that something people can do? Can go back to pension wise if they've had the appointment, go back in a couple of years' time to see if it's changed, or?
Yeah, and our pensions operation, we have a pensions operations line that's available to anyone as well. So if someone needed that check-in, further down the line, they can pick up the phone and speak to the team and just make sure, they're comfortable and they understand how things are tracking, or if they've got any sort of burning questions or issues, we can obviously talk that through with them. So yeah, we're always on hand to answer these inquiries, whether it's online or over the phone.
Thank you very much for that, Kevin, and it is very useful. So anybody that's listening, get onto the MoneyHelper website and have a look at their pension section, and there's lots of great information there, including the pension wise information about making that appointment. We've mentioned quite a lot about different resources and tools that's on the MoneyHelper, and like I've said throughout this whole podcast, is I use them a lot in the workshops that I deliver. It's one of the big takeaways that a lot of people that I run these workshops that always, what's the one thing you'll take away from today? And it's always the MoneyHelper, because I do give them a sort of tour around the tools. So if I'm talking about budgeting, we log into it and I give them that sort of visual so they can see how it works. The reason I do that is to show how easy it is to access. It's very visual. You don't have too many clicks to everything, which I think is really good. What I love about the budgeting tool is it's got a really good graphic visual. I'm a visual person, so I love the fact that it's got that colourful chart, and also the fact that you can save it, you can download it, it downloads it into a spreadsheet for you. So there's loads of great things about it. And I think the same with the pension. Like I say, as much as I got the grim news that I need to work harder, I found the tools really easy to use. And I think that's why it's important to demonstrate them through the workshops that I do, so people can see it's actually not scary. It's very easy to use. Is there any other tools available that you think might help people, whether it's helping to maximise income or anything like that? Is there any other tools you think that we've not mentioned today that we could highlight?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just on what you said there, it's brilliant that you're able to take the time to demonstrate some of the tools in action. And the budget planner is always really popular, but I think you're right, when you've got an engaged group that you can sort of talk them through it and demonstrate, here's how you feed in the information and this is the picture that it provides you with. It's really powerful. So it's great to hear that you've been able to do that in your workshops. And then just on top of some of the things that we've mentioned already, the other tool that I'd probably mention in terms of this conversation would be our benefits calculator, which has been updated recently. So that's a really important tool for people when it comes to income maximisation. It's really, really important that people check and understand what benefits and social tariffs they might be entitled to. There's still a lot of money going unclaimed when it comes to benefits in the UK. And we're obviously moving towards the winter months. Talk Money Week takes place in November. So as we move towards the winter months, if people can find £100 or a couple of £100 that they didn't previously realise they were entitled to, that can make a big difference. And then when we're talking about the likes of saving and building financial resilience and planning for the future, again, all of that type of thing is really important if you have a wee bit more money in your pocket. So yeah, again, just similar to the budget planner that you mentioned, the benefits calculator is really easy to use. It only asks 5 or 6 questions initially just to get a snapshot of your situation, and then it allows you to click through and provide some further information, and that will give you a snapshot of the benefits and social tariffs that you might be entitled to, and then how to get more information sort of moving forward to claim.
Thanks for that, Kevin, and that's really helpful, because that people need to be tapping into if they're eligible, because I think that's one of the things when I do the benefit workshops, people don't realise that, you know, they can claim more than one benefit. Some people think, especially with the communities that I work, some people are reluctant to claim because they might feel it's being greedy, or, you know, I might not be entitled, so they just assume they're not entitled to it. So it's a really good point to mention that, you know, it's a good way to check to see if you are, you might be entitled to something.
Yeah.
So with regards to community organisations, so we're thinking about planning for the future, getting in touch with Money and Pension Service, using the MoneyHelper and all the resources that are available. What role do you think that community organisations, faith groups and other local leaders could play in encouraging people to have more awareness around these services and tools?
Yeah, I think that's where it comes to the power of partnerships, isn't it? So it's about collaboration there. So, you know, in my role as Scotland Partnership Manager, I work with pretty much every type of organisation you can think of in Scotland. And that's the whole idea from our side, is that we want to get useful information, guidance and resources out there that people can access in a way that's, you know, suitable for them. So I think it's about, you know, continuing to spread the message, making people aware that services like ours exist. And then I think when, you know, organisations or groups realise the likes of MoneyHelper is government backed, it's free, it's impartial, it's a safe place to engage, I think that helps us sort of build and develop those relationships. And then on top of the signposting and the, you know, raising awareness stuff that we do, when campaigns like Talk Money Week come around, I think it's about just highlighting them locally as well, you know. So what can we do to get people involved and have these sorts of conversations? You know, is there an opportunity to have a wee Talk Money theme at a coffee morning or a women's group or whatever it might be? And, you know, that's how we build that momentum and build that movement around it and make those connections that we can kind of sustain going forward, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm always delighted when I hear the word partnership, because there's not enough of it, and you're always hearing me go on about collaboration and partnership. So it's good to hear that and know the importance of partnership and how that builds that sort of trust with those groups. So for anyone listening, and wants to take a small step forward to better pension planning, what would you recommend they do first?
So I think, like, when it comes to planning for the future and looking at pensions and things like that, I think you made a really good point there. Probably before you get to that stage, it's good practice to do a budget planner, you know. So look at your current income and expenditure. So where do I stand at the moment? Where potentially have I maybe got a bit of scope to save or to put money aside to a pension pot? So I would say that the first call to action, if you like, might be an income and expenditure check, you know, doing a wee budget calculation. And then moving forward, you know, given the fact that it's Talk Money Week, I think we would encourage people to have more open conversations about this type of thing. So whether it's with, you know, a partner or an employer, you know, maybe find out where you stand in terms of what you've got in place just now. If you pay into a workplace pension and you don't really know much about it, you know, do a little bit of digging with your HR department, or find out how you get in touch with your pension provider to get a statement, get a picture of where you stand. And then if you need a wee bit of help breaking things down, that's where MoneyHelper can really assist when it comes to removing that jargon and complexity that we spoke about earlier.
And I think that's a really good point about the jargon. In this sector, we tend to use a lot of jargon and take it for granted that everyone can understand what we're talking about, and it's good to be able to break that down for people. So is there any final thoughts or messages you'd like to share for Talk Money Week on how people can get more involved?
Yeah, I think when it comes to the action that you take in Talk Money Week, we're not looking for people to do anything huge. It's about doing something proactive. So over the past couple of years, we've encouraged people to do one thing. So, like make a promise to yourself that you're going to take action around a certain element of your money and pension. So that might be looking at your household budget. It could be looking at maybe subscriptions that you've sort of paid into for a number of years and then, not realise that you've got a tenner here and there that you're still paying that you don't use anymore. Or it could be, engaging with your pension provider and finding a bit more out about what you stand. So the theme for this year is start the conversation. So my one takeaway or one action point would be, use it as an opportunity to have that conversation. So whether it's with family members or a community group or an employer or a pension provider, have a chat about where you stand or what you're unsure of. And then hopefully, just from the information that we've shared on this episode, people will be quite interested to find out how MoneyHelper can support them. And as I said, there's loads of information on the website, which is great. Pick up the phone and speak to someone. We're on hand to answer those inquiries as well, which I think is really important.
Thank you for that, Kevin. That is really good. And that means that if any listeners want to be involved, there's a lot you can do. And just pick up the phone to Kevin and the team. They'll be happy to help you. So thank you, Kevin, for coming along today and sharing some of your useful insights and expertise with us on today's podcast. And hopefully we could get you back on to keep the conversation going about all things money.
Always a pleasure, Helen. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. We will include links below for the MoneyHelper website for anyone that's interested to look at the calculators that we've mentioned and some of the useful resources. I would urge you to do so because they are fantastic. Don't forget to hashtag Talk Money and hashtag Start the Conversation. So please like and follow us or share us on social media.
Thanks again for joining us during Talk Money Week. We hope today's episode helps spark a conversation, build confidence, or inspire a new step in your financial journey. Keep talking, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.